Yo, it is hot outside. It's Monday, the 9th. This will be live on the 10th, so it's less than 24 hours from now, and it is hot. And my weather app is telling me that it is 101 degrees. So that noise in the background is my AC. I could have turned it off, but it's been on the fritz lately, and every time I turn it off or turn it back on, and it kind of goes out, and I don't really feel like having to deal with no AC when it's this hot outside. Anyway, welcome to the show. Yeah, how about that, huh? Episode number 33 of the Homesteads and Homeschools podcast. Thank you for being out there and for listening in and giving this show a download. My guest today is Julian from the Northwest Homestead. Found him on Instagram and got to talk and asked him a few questions here and there. Really liked what he was doing, lots of cool pictures. And he came on and we talked for a little while about his setup and everything. Had a real good time. He's a real good dude, and it was enjoyable, and I hope you all will enjoy it as well. So without further ado, let's go sow those Liberty seeds with Julian. So my guest today is Julian, who I found on Instagram. He actually keeps his Instagram pretty up to date. He updates that regularly, unlike mine, which I think it's probably going on about a month since I put anything on there. So, but yeah, he's got a homestead out there in the Northwest, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his experience, his life growing up, and how he got to where he is today. And Julian, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So what is your, we'll talk about it at the end, but your Instagram handle, what is it again? Northwest Homestead?
Northwest Homestead, I guess.
All right. And do you update that daily?
No, it's a repository for pictures of my kid, basically, and it's always the things we're doing, right? But like, I'm holding the camera, taking a picture of her doing the things we're doing. That's the way I treat it. Yeah. There's always stuff up there, and always curious projects that you're working on and always growing, which I find fascinating. So that's cool. But so you're up in the Northwest. You got a little homestead. Was that something that you were part of, like as a kid growing up? You did gardening and stuff, or? Yeah, I've kind of been all over. I grew up in Vermont, and my dad was a stay-at-home dad in the 70s before it was cool, right? And so, my parents made that choice to raise us like with a stay-at-home parent. And I think the way they frame it is my mom could make more money than my dad, and so he's the one that got the kid job, of which he crushed. He was really hands-on. We did a lot together, all three of us. And so, it was big gardens and animals from different times. His background is dairy. He grew up on a Holstein dairy farm. And so dairy's always been kind of part of our lives. And like, I don't remember not knowing how to milk, right? Like, it's something I think I don't ever remember being taught. I've always been able to do, And so, and we moved around. Went to high school in Lincoln, Nebraska. That was a hard shock, moving to the suburbs, and I got out of there as fast as possible.
It's hard. You grow up in a particular environment, whether it's, suburban, rural, urban, whatever. And it's hard to transition, I think. Like, you can enjoy parts of it, but I lived in the city for a couple of years, and that was enough. It was all I could handle, and I had to get back to my roots, I guess. I can imagine living in suburbia after growing up in Vermont was a bit of a change.
It's a cultural shift, northern Vermont is very different than Lincoln, Nebraska. And so, but it was cool to, I don't know, like, it's nice to
everybody on the coast, they call it flyover country and they don't understand it and they don't understand the mentality, but I don't know. I do. I live there. And so, I don't know. When my wife and I were deciding where to move, I told her, I was like, babe, we're looking at places like where we live now. And I said, man, we could own 200 acres in Iowa, right? Like, like, I mean, like, it was not outside of my mindset. You know what I mean? Like, I'm happy that we didn't do that, but I could have, right?
Yeah, I know it. I know it well. We were in Vermont ourselves for a little while, and we wanted to do this. We wanted to expand, and the cost of living, the cost of land was just astronomical. I mean, we're talking $10,000 an acre. Yeah. And you can come down here into Georgia, and it's not like dirt cheap, but it's a lot cheaper than that. And the distance your money will stretch sometimes it's tricky, and you got to make those trade-offs at some point. At what point is, 200 acres is nice, but I could get this other thing, and it's a lot less, but it'll be better, environment or better situational,
Yeah, playing the where do you want to move to start your family life that my wife and I played when we were getting ready to have kids or whatever. Was a fun exercise. Like it was rad. It was what do you want to do? And at the time we're living in Colorado and basically heavily involved in the ski industry. And that was not the place I called it Disneyland on snow. It was not the place to start a family. It's not an accurate representation of life on planet Earth,
Yeah.
And so, it's like, well, we still want to be near skiing and I, my head was around like paying attention to watersheds and paying attention to living in a place where we could do what we want and afford spots. And so the Northwest was a nice place to test. And when we came here, man, it would have been taking some serious convincing to go somewhere else. I like it here a lot.
Yeah. So what do you do then that,
I got a W-2 job. That's what I call it. I work for a snowboard manufacturer up here, and I do, I'm like a projects guy. So I weld and carpentry, and I mean, sometimes I clean up messes. Actually, a lot of the time I've just sort of, a little organizational stuff, help one of those guys that helps keep production running. And that affords me to have an incredibly flexible schedule. Like, as long as I don't drop the ball, they don't care when I'm there. It's awesome. Like, and
that's nice.
Yeah, I love that. And so, hey, I'm here. It's Wednesday at 9 a.m, and I'm not there, right? I'm getting to talk to you. It's rad,
That's cool. Now, did that allow you guys to also kind of, where you wanted to move to, or where you could move to? Did that open things up for you in that sense, or were you kind of pigeonholed into certain areas?
Man, I was trying to escape the ski industry, and and so when we came here, I don't know, I feel like I'm one of those kind of blue collar guys that's infinitely employable, right? And I wasn't worried about getting a job, and it was very clear that it was going to cost us a lot less to live here in Western Washington than in the mountains of Colorado, so we could afford to make less money and live better, for sure. And so we chased my wife's job here. She's a physical therapist, and that type of work is also really flexible. It can be, and it is for her. And so, when the kid came along, we just did that gruesome split schedule thing, where you see your wife in passing for a couple years as your kid grows. And that was hard, but we're past that now. And so, it's been great. She never had to go to daycare. She don't go to school.
I don't know. I think there's so much value to that, to having a parent home, whoever it may be, to just kind of to be there and to not ship your kid off to whether it's daycare or school or whatever, and have somebody else essentially raise your kid. It's just, I can see where it'd be hard. I can see where some people it's tough, but at the same time, you make decisions, you make choices, and if it means you have less money to spend on trips to Disneyland, that's what it means, you know. But
well, lucky for me, like I'm never spending money on a trip to Disneyland, but I get I get the genesis of what you're talking about for sure. And she, it's cool. Like she, you know, my wife's different than me, and they have an awesome relationship that's, you know, their time at home and doing their things is different than our time at home doing my things, right? And you know, or our things. And so, you know, where versus me, right? I grew up with my dad. My mom went to work every day, and so that was pretty much dad's program, right? But it's our program, right? Like it's both of us.
that's cool.
And yeah, and especially when it comes to the homeschooly bits, you know, I mean, two different. I mean, we're on the same page, like, right? It's not like, but it's, you know, she interacts differently than I do, and I think that's, I feel like that's a huge benefit for us and for the Munchkin, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you guys decided to move out to Washington, then part of it was, I guess, you wanted to set up a little bit of a homestead of sorts, or you wanted to grow, or what were some of the decisions that went into that?
Yeah, I mean, we were living at 9,000 feet in Colorado. That's not for humans to live year round, right? That's not where people live year round. There, you know, like only because of natural gas and concrete, right? I mean, and so, yeah, the idea was I think the way I framed it back then was like to have a relationship with soil, right?
Okay.
As an overarching idea, and you know, and Karen Ann was amenable to that. And you know, when we got here, we have a little less than 6 acres here, and the food grows in the ditches here. Like there's no reason to work hard to cultivate a spinach crop if stinging nettle starts coming out of the ground in February, which it does, right? You know, like, and hey, man, we cultivate a spinach crop too, right? I mean, but it's both, right? And so that we were able to get that here. And
do you do a lot of foraging then?
some. I mean, it's really weird. You just sort of like ride the line of falling in a rut with the way things are, and you know, I think like anybody that's been in one spot for a while, I get really into one thing and then that kind of fades away, and then get into another thing. And some things have been really consistent. The dairy operation has, once we started that, if you don't focus on it pretty myopically, it can get away from you. So that's a daily focus. But yeah, I mean, Karen Ann's probably really the best at cultivating and finding things out there. And, you know, she's the sort of tincture maker and does the solved stuff, and likes to keep her nose in an herbology book, you know, and so that, you know, yeah, it happens for sure.
Yeah. She was cool with all that beforehand too, then. It wasn't like, you know,
yeah, I mean,
her.
Like I said, that moving game, right? We had lists, right? And like, and yeah, I think she likes it here a lot. Probably likes it here a lot less than me. We're far, like Karen Ann likes to travel a lot more than me, and we're far away from the airport. It's a commute. And so some of that ruralness is a drain, but not, I mean, it's manageable.
Yeah, I hear that. We, you know, we're like 2 hours from the airport, 2 hours from Atlanta, and you know, it just you factor that all in. You're spending 6, 8, 10 hours on a plane, and you're just commuting to the airport and doing it all. And it's at that point, you know, might as well drive. Then I have my car at the end, you know. But
yeah, sometimes. Yep.
Yeah. So all right. So you mentioned, I know you got lots of stuff going on there. I'm always curious with your pictures. So some of your skills, like your welding and all that stuff that you have, is that stuff that you had, that skill set, is that something you had beforehand that you like learned as a kid? Is it something you kind of developed as you needed it? Or how did that go?
Yeah, I just, you know, I was working at the ski area and I was a snowmaker and I wanted to stay employed. And so that meant running a grinder in a gas line ditch with salty old dudes that were welding, right? You know, and heavy equipment operation. And, man, I remember making jokes about woodworkers and the inferior building material that they used, right? Because we were welders and steel was better. And now I live in the land of wood, and I love, like I want to build everything out of wood. Like we're in the middle of remodeling the kitchen, and it's all old growth fur that I've scavenge and store for a while. And it's awesome to, to just make things from what's around, and wood is so fun. So yeah, I to answer your question, I picked that stuff up along the way as a means to keep myself like employable, right?
Yeah, it's because that's something like I don't know how to weld. My father knows how to weld. He showed me how to weld, and I never really learned or paid attention too much. Other than it's really bright and it's hot under the mask, and but
I mean, it's easy. Just look at the mouth breathers that are doing it for a living, right? I mean, like, and I'm joking. I'm talking about myself, right? But like, I mean, that's the cool thing about skills like that is the learning curve is incredibly steep, and it takes about an hour. And then you're on the other side, and then everything else is the details and refining a skill set. You know what I mean? But nothing's it's cutting on a line, and it's the nature of building things. It doesn't change.
Yeah, and that's it though. Like all those skills, the talents, they come into handy, especially when you're trying to do things on the cheap, like around the homestead. You want to put a something on your metal barn. You want to, all that stuff comes in handy, knowing how to do that. And like you said, it's, learning curve is steep, but you put a little time into it, and you can learn, especially with, God, YouTube has got so much garbage on there. Like it's just a rabbit hole too. You start with one thing, and before you know it, you're on some other project that you had no intention of undertaking.
Yeah, the algorithm can get you. Gotta be smarter than the computer robot, right?
Yeah, I can try.
You can try. Yeah, we all think, right? Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of that stuff's transferable, right? Like it, being a welder is not dissimilar from sweating a PEX or a copper fitting, in the plumbing world, right? And I'm not great at that, but I can just look quick. Remind myself. Yeah. And then they don't leak. It's cool. It works. It's nice.
Yeah. Definitely. I've seen some of that, like, as built a house before and did the plumbing and it took me a while to figure things out where we are now. And, but I'm like, wait a minute, I remember all these things. And once you kind of learn some of those things, they're in the back of your head, and it might take a while to pull them back out, but they're there, and I don't know, useful stuff to have. But, so you got a handful of animals there. I know you got a dairy setup. What do you guys have there?
It's a homestead sized dairy goat operation, and we sort of, I didn't know what we were. I wasn't hell bent on having a dairy, but when we got here, and part of our land is stays wet, for a big chunk of the year, and you put a pig on that, they're going to really tear it up. You put a large framed animal on that, like a cow or steer, something, it's going to really do some damage for months of the year. But the light framed animals like goats are perfect. And the Northwest just lends itself to their favorite food. I mean, they want to eat brush and browse and all the understory things that make it hard to walk through not the old growth woods. That's pretty open, but we don't have that. I mean, the woods that's here is their favorite things. And so we started, I think the first goats I have a picture of Remy somewhere, like able to sit up, like big enough to sit up in like a straw pile with like a steaming wet baby goat that was just born, right? Somewhere that picture exists, right? And so she's kind of been born into it, and that sort of, I mean, I think that having the dairy operation, which is literally every day, all the time, has lent itself really well to the sort of, to not going to school. Like those overlap perfectly, for me, for us, and that kind of you're constantly building fence and constantly refining how we're growing pastures so that every sunbeam that hits the ground turns into a productive calorie. That's the idea, right? I mean, and so spending time dreaming about reducing inputs that come in and, and creating calories, right? Like, I don't know, like that's such a crude way of talking about it, but it is sort of that management, and learning and reading and God, having animals die and dig holes and figuring it out the hard way. And, like that's something that, I don't know. That's the kind of way I feel like I grew up a little bit. And I wanted to set that for Remy. And that's been, and we've been able to achieve some of that.
Yeah. It sounds like, I mean, that's, I don't know, you got goats for what? That's like 6-8 years now, somewhere in there.
Math last year, I think we've had like 75 goat babies born here over the years, something, we milk somewhere between like 3 and 5 does for 300 days a year. And then like the goal is to dry off January and February while they're pregnant and give them that break. And then we go skiing. And so that's like the time we can get away. It's really easy to find somebody to take care of this place when you're not milking. And so, that's the time to go try to find some fresh snow.
So, and I can imagine, like, we just went on vacation sort of for a couple of weeks, visit family up in New England area. And, it was finding somebody to take care of the place was difficult.
It is. And like the potential for something to like compound quickly, right? Like, happens quick. And so the longer you go, the scarier it gets. And I think, I don't know, like, I've been focusing a lot more on trying to find some. So when my folks are here, my parents can take care of it and it's never a problem. It's never a concern, right? They just have it on lock, but they're not really close. And so they can do it sometimes, but not consistently. But now that we've been doing it a while and it is a small community and like people hear about, people who like that type of thing hear about you and have kind of started to filter into our lives a little bit. And so I'm hoping that, and I had these like grand ambitions that like the neighborhood kids would want to be paid handsomely to take care of my place and they could learn it through osmosis. And that really didn't work out. Not yet anyways. Maybe I thought they were a little bit, maybe I had bigger ideas about their abilities at their ages or whatever, but that might still happen. But people, there's other people with the same ideas who've read the same books as me that have moved to this place for the same reasons. And so I'm hoping to have skilled farm hands in the future.
You would think that if you find a community sort of like-minded folks like that somebody would be able to pick it up and do it. That's kind of what we did. I won't get into it. It was the animals survived, the plants did not. So,
man, I'm sorry, dude. It's a hard place to be a plant in Georgia, from what I've seen in the pictures of that place. But
yeah, it was just like, it was traumatic. And I'm like, I like the animals, but I'm a plant guy, and got home and all the leaves are brown and shriveled and they're all like, anyway.
I'm sorry. That's such a stinger, man. Of all like that. I feel for you. The empathy is real.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. It was what, you came home late at night and everything was just fried, and it is what it is. But in that moment, I must have looked like a crazy lunatic. Who gets that upset about plants? Come on, but.
Yeah, but it's I don't know. I mean, that's the thing about doing this, right? Like, it's more, right? Like, there's this, the satisfaction of canned food in the pantry is not explainable to somebody who doesn't understand like the whole entire process of like managing the soil and getting it to fruition and then putting it by. Like, if that's not the whole mentality, and it's just like, well, but you said to turn the water on for 20 minutes. It's like, well, 20 minutes wasn't enough, man, or whatever, Yeah. Yep. And it takes like a bigger understanding, which is the thing that I found is people who have that bigger understanding tend to generally be very busy doing their own thing.
Yeah. I think so. It is. I try to think about that now. If somebody called me and said, "Hey, I'm going away for a couple of weeks. Can you watch over my stuff?" I'd love to, but I simply just don't know if I have the time. I mean, that's
right.
As much time as you put into yours, can you put that into somebody else's? And it's not always the case. But
yeah.
So you guys have a bit of a garden there?
Man, I wish if I could, how you like look back retrospectively and be like, if I had to start all over again, I think I'd focus on being a better gardener first. I'm not the greatest gardener. We're really lucky because you can get by so easy here. Like, we don't have big pest pressure. We have some, but it's not horrible. Like, you literally can put your squash type plants outside and not worry about them. There's no vine borers. There's not that, and so you can get by easy. So we do some of that stuff. We're very lucky. I have a big greenhouse that, the place we bought has a lot of standing infrastructure, and I was able to convert the south side of one of the barns quickly to a greenhouse, and we grew in containers in there first. I think it's about 900 square feet, más o menos, and then eventually I rented a concrete saw and I cut holes in the floor, and now we grow in the dirt in the ground, which is way better than pots. And that thing, I think we planted New Zealand spinach in there one time and we've never put a seed back. You just sort of let it be unruly and we just keep eating it and it'll die. And next year it comes back and it doesn't look great and it's not manicured beautifully, but boy, it tastes good. And
that's all that matters.
Yeah. And so I've been able to get by without putting a lot of work in. But if I did, if I was better at it and I started tomato seeds in February, I could put by a lot of tomatoes. I just don't do it. And so I think maybe as things, we talked before about you get into one thing and it kind of shifts a little. And as things shift, I want to be a better grower of the growies. And I will, I'm sure. But yeah, right now, not as much. Just get by on being lucky.
Good deal. Now, so you, I don't know, shift gears a little. Your daughter is, how old is she?
9.
9, okay. And you guys, you school her at home then? Is that pretty much?
That's oh man, it's those words, the more you get into this, the more those words, they only matter to people who pay attention to that type of thing. But God, I hate that word school. Right? And so, yeah, we live the way we live and we just learn all the time. And so I guess what we do, if it was rounded off to a title, the most would probably be something like unschooling or self-directed learning or autodidactic living or something like that, Yeah. And I don't know that we'll do that forever. We're changing, she's changing, the culture's changing, we're going to keep changing. But right now, hey, read, do mathematics, be a good person, be present in your environment. And I'm not worried about the details or what the people down the road say you should know at this age. I don't know. It seems very, it doesn't make the schedule, everything doesn't make any sense to me at all.
No, it's, I think when you really step back and look at it and think about things, you can do what you're doing and you can think that way. It's just, I don't think a lot of people kind of at first go, we've just been so conditioned that, you got to be on grade level for this and this, and if you're not, you got, and all this stuff that just kind of, that's the way I grew up, and that's the way it's going to be, and that's the way it will always be. And you're not really observant of how much actually happens in a day when you're at home doing, and you guys are lucky in that I imagine she picks up a lot of skills from you, and your like your welding and your stuff like that, your woodworking, that's all part of it. And if you were, you think about that sometimes, if you had both parents off at work and an office job, you're the amount of skills you're learning is probably a lot less, I would imagine. But does she help you?
I try to be kind of two minds of it. I mean, I want to. To me, it seems like that grade level thing, like you talked about, is so anti-human. It's just so perfectly bureaucratic, right? Like, and only somebody who's trying to run a machine with arbitrary goals would come up with such a system of learning A at age X. Like, it's just it's so anti-human. That's just not the way people interact in real life. Like, that's not how I got, it's like, I don't know, like, it's just ever go on vacation with friends of friends and just naturally somebody cooks and naturally somebody does, just like, that's how people, to me, that's in my observation, that's how people are. And so, and the things that, are the priority aren't the priorities for having a beautiful life, right? Like, algebra is only applicable if you want algebra in your life, and picking it up when you need it seems way smarter than force feeding it to somebody who may never use it. It doesn't make any sense to me, And so, Karen Ann is a much more of a sort of professional, and I'm much more of a blue collar guy. And so those two things are different, and we don't neglect everything. Like expose her to, like, hey, there's this thing called a workbook, right? And there's a pattern to the workbook, right? And the idea is, sort of repetitively doing something over and over again so you can regurgitate it if you need it. And so she's seen that stuff. And that's good, but boy, it's not the primary focus. And I think maybe as she grows and develops what she wants, then it may become that. But today it's not.
Yeah. I think that's something. I mean, you really, it's for the here and now. That's not where she is, and that's not where my kids are, right? Like I think any kid at 8, 9, 10 years old, they're not gonna be able to tell you what they're gonna want to do when they're 20 years old, 25 years old.
It'd be kind of creepy if they did.
And it's just kind of learning, and when they figure things out, when they want to get focused on one particular thing, they can do that. They have the time to do that. Yeah. They have the skills to figure out how to learn about that stuff, and I don't know. I remember working with my dad in the basement, as he's an engineer of sorts, but I remember like building cabinets. We built an extra house, built a house that we sold. There's all those things that you do are so valuable. There's so much like skill that goes into that, and things that you have to use math. If you're gonna do woodworking, you're gonna have to use some math, right? You're gonna have to take measurements. You're gonna have to do division. You're gonna have to do all that stuff. So it's not like none of those skills are coming through. They're just coming through in applicable ways. Whereas
the kids that show up to the factory that went to school and took school, they don't know what 3/8 and 3/8 is. Right? You know what I mean? But because you run a tape measure for a living, you know what 3/8 and 3/8 is, right? And so it's practical to me. It's important to me to be able to add and subtract fractions, but it's not to a lot of people.
Right. Yeah. I remember that as a kid going through school. I think I I took pre-calc junior year, and then I just didn't take math senior year because it was just, I had no interest in it, and there was no reason I was going to ever need to use a geometry proof. I was I'm never going to have to tell somebody why a square is a square and like prove it to them. Like it just wasn't going to happen. And it drove me nuts. And I did pretty abysmal because I think I just kind of threw in the towel and was like, whatever. A square is a square because it's a square, and that's good enough. But I don't know. So your wife is on board with the schooling then? That was a easy decision for you guys, or
thinking about where to go? I remember we were thinking about the West Coast, and I remember like a super quick internet search about is Washington or Oregon a better place to not have to send your kid to school? And I think in like 30 seconds, the answer was Washington was easier. And I just filed that as a like one tick in the Washington list. I don't even know if I was right or wrong, but it is really conveniently easy to keep your kid out of school here, especially in rural Washington, right? I mean, we have I never knew that I had so much to thank for fundamentalist Christians for carving this pathway I wanted to walk. It's just like, oh man, cool. Thanks so much. And so we, and we go back and forth. There's times where it's frustrating, right? And it doesn't seem to be right. And that's the time to sit down and reevaluate and have a conversation about it and kind of come up with a new idea and try something out, and sit down in the milk barn and have a heart to heart with the kid about like, okay, this thing is like, I'm uncomfortable with the way this is going. What do you think about making a few changes and seeing how that works? And so far that's been working out pretty good.
Good deal. It's something I wish I was able to do more of. Cut the strings a little bit, give a little more freedom to the kids when it comes time to their sort of education. I still, being educated as a teacher, it's still difficult. I'm still like, it's just so hard to let go. But I think we're doing a better job with our older one, kind of giving him a little more freedom to parse things out on his own. And like you said, it's different for every kid. Some kids that works, some kids it doesn't work. Some kids want that direction, some kids need that direction, and they ask for it and they'll seek it out.
Right. Or you put a little bit of regimented stuff in front of them and see how they react, and then talk about it. I mean, like I remember kind of just, I think I have this mindset of individualism, I guess, kind of. And so I remember when she was a little like wrapped up infanty bottle of bubble of goo or whatever, like looking for those signs of autonomy, right? Like, and seeing, and like, but because I was looking for it, I'd see it like really early. I remember the first things she said were the first concepts she used were expressing her wants. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that, like, that meant so much to me, seeing that when she finally got a grasp of language, it was to articulate what she wanted to do herself effectively, right? In the form of a 18-month-old or 2.5-year-old. I don't remember exactly. I'm bad at those type of things, but like a standing kid on the couch, right? Like, and ever since then, it's like, okay, well, every day you're marching more and more towards being your own self-realized individual. I'll just help you get there, and
I think we'd all be better off if we could do that or recognize that. 9 times out of 10, everybody wants to be their own self, right? I don't know very many people that just want to be a lackey of sorts, and so it's important to recognize that and to heed that as you raise your kids, that they do want to be individuals, and they should be. Why shouldn't they be?
It seems kind of like I don't know if it's uniquely human. It's probably not uniquely human, but it definitely seems to be a human, like a big part of humanity. And And so it's awesome to see individuals work together, right? Like that's actually what makes going to work for me kind of fun, right? Especially being project based. It's like, you've got this job, I've got this job. And if we all help each other out, we'll get to the finish line on time and this thing will happen. And then we can high five each other, right? Like I love that, you know, I love, and we took serious wind damage this winter and I've got roofs to rebuild and it was great having my friends come help me put roofing on, which is not particularly glamorous or comfortable or, you know, like it's not fun, but like at the end of the day, man, cold beer never tastes so good, you know? And I don't know. It's like people working together in common is, I don't know. It's like both sides of the thing. And I feel like that's the aesthetic of life. Like you're walking the line between different ideas, right? If it feels good and everybody's smiling at the end of something, you know?
Yeah. It's a nice feeling. It's a good feeling. It's really like that. Those instances are the real instances. You know, that is life. You know, not what you see on the TV or read on the internet, or, you know, it's being able to do those things. I don't know, sort of recognize the humanity in us all. It's, I don't know. Anyway, sorry.
No, I mean, like it's weird that something that when it happens, like seems to be so right, is hard to articulate. Like, I mean, isn't that sort of what the great philosophers have been trying to do for freaking ever, right? You know?
Yeah.
And so I I mean, it's just like, wow, that was cool. And then everybody high fives and you're like, feel great.
Yeah. I had putting up that was the way it was, putting up our fence for the goats. You know, I'd never done it before. I'd never run woven wire fence before. And some guys down the road came and they helped out, and it was nice. You know, they're all kind of grandfathers at this point, you know, with kids my kids' age, and you know, but it was nice. They had so much knowledge to share, and it's such a good feeling, and they were happy to have it done, and I was happy to have it done, and it was just like, all right, we helped each other, you know, and being able to kind of lean on your neighbors, your local community for help and support is a nice feeling. It's a good feeling. So.
Well, yeah, and then the genuine reciprocation of that, right? Being able to do the same backwards that makes the circle complete or whatever is, sweet spot right there.
Yeah, it's a two-way street for sure.
For sure. Yeah.
All right, man. I really don't want to keep you. I appreciate your time and coming on. Like we say, the top your Instagram was Northwest Homestead.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And I don't know, people check it out. It's you always got projects going on. It's always it's cool. It's cool. You know, watching. I'm like, oh, look at that. Look what he's doing there.
Yeah. What my dad calls us, you know, my brother has a different version of this life, you know, and my sister lives a little bit more in the suburbs, but he calls the two boys like 5th generation shit shovelers or something like that. And that sort of dairy farm work ethic just exists. And so I don't know, I'm always going to be, if I don't do something, I get restless. So I'll just keep taking pictures of it, you know?
Yeah, I know. That's, my dad was like that, you know, he still is like that. And it's something that I thought I got away from a little bit. And as I'm aging, I'm realizing that I did not get away from it, and I constantly need to be doing something. And my wife gets on me, and you know, just go take a nap, just go do something. I'm like, no, I got to do this. I got to get this done.
Well, the best part about that for me is like I'll take a nap when I fall asleep, and when it happens, I just sleep so good. You know what I mean? It's great.
Do you love freedom? Do you love songs? Do you want to love all 365 days in a year? If you're anything like me, the simple answer is yes, and Freedom Song 365 can deliver all of these things. When you sign up for Freedom Song 365, you will receive an email every day that delves into the different ways freedom and liberty are messaged in a massive catalog of music. Each message is carefully crafted into easily consumable paragraphs that give you the necessary information to share with your friends. I've been receiving Freedom Song 365 emails every day of 2019, and I've yet to be disappointed. But really, why should I be? With the fabulous minds of Nikki P. from the Sounds Like Liberty podcast, my guest from episode 4, Sherry Voluntary, and the wonderful Luke Tatum of the Culture of Peace podcast, there's more brain power utilized in the creation of each individual Freedom Song 365 email than is proffered in a whole day at any DMV across the country. Head on over to freedomsong365.com and sign up today to start receiving your daily emails of musical integrity. Use the promo code Homestead and you'll receive 15% off this superb service. Again, that's freedomsong365.com, promo code Homestead for 15% off. And you can still hear that AC running, can't you? It has not cooled down in the 30 seconds that it took to reopen a new window to record this outro in. So it's still hot. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that interview with Julian. I did. Listening through it, I'm sure you could tell it was quite the exchange. I enjoyed it. Hope you all did as well. Thank you all for coming on and listening and downloading this, or whatever it is that you do that allows you to hear this. I don't know. Might be some crazy technology out there. Anyway, if you want to support the show, you can go leave a review on iTunes. You can hit the subscribe button in your podcatcher. You can tell your mother, tell your brother, tell a friend. Or you can even click through the Amazon link, homesteadsandhomeschoools.com/Amazon. And that's our affiliate link, and I'll get, some small percentage of what you already buy from there. Or, of course, you can go on to Patreon, patreon.com/the Liberty Hippie, and that'll hook you up with some goodies there, and you get some bonus content, and I don't know, all sorts of things. And if you have any suggestions as to things you'd like to see on the pod, or things you'd like to hear me do differently, or whatever it may be, you can email me, homesteadsandhomeschoools@gmail.com. And of course, today's show notes you can find at homesteadsandhomeschoools.com/033. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I hope it cools down for you if it's as hot as it is for me. Either way, get out there, sow those seeds of liberty. We can all reap seeds of freedom together.
I'm gonna ride a hustler's dream. I'm gonna ride a hustler's dream. I'm gonna ride a hustler's dream.